Hi, I'm Dr. Nick Galli, and in this video I want to talk to you about frustration tolerance and how having a high frustration tolerance can allow you to work harder, persist through failures, and ultimately achieve your goals. So what is frustration? Here's your Oxford Dictionary definition of frustration. We've all felt this, so maybe we don't need a definition, but I think it's useful. The feeling of being upset or annoyed, especially because of inability to change or achieve something. Example, I sometimes feel like screaming with frustration. Anytime we're blocked toward a goal or something we think we should be doing but aren't able to do, we experience frustration. It's part of the human condition. It's not wrong to experience it, but what is wrong and what is harmful to your performance and to your well-being is to get lost in the frustration, to allow the frustration to overtake you. We call this low frustration tolerance. And you can imagine that somebody with really low frustration tolerance would be reluctant to want to challenge themselves. In fact, what we've seen in research is that people who have low frustration tolerance tend to avoid hard things more so than other people. They back off, or maybe they get started, and when things get hard, they give up. That's what low frustration tolerance is, and if you're stuck in that state, it's going to be really hard to push yourself and to achieve the things that you want to achieve. So I want to talk about how we can conquer and tackle low frustration tolerance. Many times we're frustrated because of an attempt to control things that we actually can't control. You've probably heard the phrase, control the controllables. And many of you have probably heard the serenity prayer, which I have on the slide right now. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. I really think this is an important prayer, an important quote that we should take some time to think about, because if we spend all of our time trying to control those things which we cannot control, we truly will become overwhelmed, burn out, and stop short of our goals. So a lot of people become frustrated quite simply because they're trying to change things like other people, like the environment, like the rules that are just unchangeable. Right now, they might be trying to figure out, how do I change COVID? And you can't change that, right? You have to roll with it and do the best you can. So I invite you to try and put yourself more into what we call the circle of control. And this comes from a great book, if you like to read, called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. He talks about that, we can imagine our life as a concentric circle, or a set of concentric circles, where in that outer circle we have these things the many things that we really can't control. Other people's behavior is in there. Pretty much everything in there is about other people or the environment. I would add the past or the future to this. We can't go back and change our mistakes. We can't move forward and change things that have yet to happen. That's what anxiety is when we try to do that. But we can do our best to stay in the middle circle and control your effort and your attitude, your words, your actions, how you respond to your mistakes. And that's where you need to stay if you want to avoid that low frustration tolerance. As much as possible, remind yourself to stay within your circle of control. And sometimes people have success with little stickers or cues or reminders when they catch themselves falling outside into that outer circle to remind them to come back into the inner circle. As an athlete, it's a common mistake. There are so many things around you that you can't control, and only really a few things that you can control. And you find that you end up having much more success and much more enjoyment the more often you're able to stay inside that inner circle, which is where we'd like to be most of the time. Another factor that leads to frustration are faulty ways of thinking or irrational beliefs that we have. Albert Ellis was a famous psychologist, and he believed that faulty thinking was at the root of depression and anxiety. There are 3 musts that hold us back. I must do well, you must treat me well, and the world must be easy. And along the way, a lot of us have internalized those and come to expect everything to be fair and just and right. And that is not the world that we live in. And the sooner that we're able to accept that, not lie down and let people walk all over us, but know that people are not going to just hand over what you want, and things aren't always going to work out. The quicker we come to accept that, the better off we'll be and the better able to tolerate frustrations we will be. Don't believe everything you think. I love that, because a lot of times it's the things that we think that get us into trouble rather than the things that actually happen to us. So how do you handle that? How do you handle these faulty thoughts? Well, you have to make an effort, and you have to actually try and challenge them or dispute them or debate them. So on one hand, you have the belief, I must not fail, because if I do, that would make me a failure. We may not actually say that, but a lot of us do hold that internal belief. So how do we flip that when we recognize it? How about I expect to succeed, which we want all of our athletes to, but I understand that sometimes things don't work out. That doesn't make me a failure. It was a failed attempt. I haven't succeeded yet, but I'm working on it, and I expect that in the future I'll do better. So you're not laying down, giving up. You're recognizing that it's something you still want to shoot for, but you're not internalizing the failure and making it all about you. And that's what tends to happen when you have that faulty belief and when you're not, when you have low frustration tolerance. The last one, I pull this from a lot of the things I see. I have small kids, small children, and their teachers will use this as they're trying to teach them emotional regulation. They'll actually have this chart in the classroom. How big is your problem, right? Because kids overreact to things. They took my toy, or they didn't let me have my turn, and it becomes, for some kids, this big explosion, right? You'd think there was some kind of a natural disaster and something horrific has happened, but really the other kid just took their toy. And as adults, we do this too. We make our problems much bigger than they actually are. What we want to see is an alignment between your reaction, calm, and the problem, tiny. Not tiny or small problem and super concerned, annoyed, or angry. And especially in times of high stress, this is what we see. We see, if you were to able to go back and watch yourself, why did I let that get me so upset? You know, why did I let that small offhand comment that person said make me into this, angry monster here? It was more of a small thing. I should have, been okay. Not my favorite thing that they said, doesn't make me feel good, but I'm okay and I can move on. So just being aware of how big your problem is, tiny, small, medium, large, emergency. These rarely happen. And making sure that your reaction is actually in line with the size of that problem. Simple, but effective. So to become less frustratable, to have higher frustration tolerance, work on controlling your controllables, letting go of the uncontrollables. Work on debating with yourself when you find those irrational or faulty thoughts creeping in. And then finally, objectively rate your problem. On a scale of 1 to 10, or from tiny to emergency, where does this fit? And then what kind of reaction does that warrant? I think if you're able to work some of those strategies, you'll be happier and you'll perform better.